It's the first episode in our Purification of the Soul series today. It's a week to inspire and motivate us, inshallah, and to kickstart the week, we're discussing Ikhlaas, or sincerity. What does Islam say about sincerity, and how do we stay sincere? We discuss this and more, so stay tuned to today's Women's AM. Bismillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My dear sisters, and welcome to Women's AM. It's the show that brings you news, discussion, tips and much more. We're live, of course, from our London studios. In today's show, we have a roundup on the day's stories of interest in News Bites. We start off our Purification of the Soul series and discuss a very important subject in her views. We will be taking a look at Ikhlaas, or sincerity. And of course, we'll be getting some inspiration by drawing some life lessons from a truly inspirational person in Inspirational Muslims. So we've got lots to get through, and it looks to be another action-packed show for you this morning. I'm your host Hassana, and here to help us in our discussion today is our Women's AM panel. Joining us today are our regular sisters Zainab and Ayan. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Great to see you, sisters. And of course we have our special guest today, Sister Ibtihal Basit, who is a women's speaker. MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Alaikum salam.
How are you doing today?
Well, I always mention that, can you please repeat special, but because it's Ikhlaas Day today, please don't mention I'm special. I'm not that special.
I think you just said special about 3 times there, sister.
Yeah,
mashallah.
Special. What's special?
Special guest, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So, sisters, you know, we were discussing this earlier on. I thought my question today is a little bit of a strange one, but it's, what's your favourite scent? And I'm going to come to Sister Ayan first.
I like sweet smells, but not overpowering ones.
Okay.
So I like the smell of vanilla and coconut. That's my sort of thing.
It's quite unusual, quite sweet, and then you've got kind of a tropical type scent on the inside.
Well, coconut can be sweet as well, you see.
Sister Ibtihal, how about you?
I'm a criminal barrister, and I deal with lots of criminal clients who can be a bit smelly, so any other smell than that. But
Okay.
really, who cares?
Okay, alhamdulillah. Sister Zainab.
You're not going to answer it,
No, this is a bit weird, but basically the attar my father-in-law wears for Jummah.
Oh, mashallah.
It fills the house full of the fragrance, and it makes me think of Jummah, so I like that.
I quite like cinnamon, I have to admit. I'm a bit of a kind of a cinnamon fan, so yeah, definitely cinnamon. Reminds me of winter. Feels quite good. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for that, sisters. Well, we're going to go to our first segment of the show now. It's News Bites. In this segment, we take a look at the day's stories of interest and discuss what's been happening around the world. What have we got this morning, sisters?
I've got one from the Telegraph. It reads, streets are alive with the sound of children playing. So this is due to the fact that a lot of residents are asking to have roads closed off so that children can play out on the streets. So this is to bring back play streets. So now they're doing it for up to 3 hours a week. We've got a lady, Naomi Fuller, who's from Playing Out, which is a not-for-profit company, which is helping residents to prepare and sign up for this. And this has kind of come about because a lot of people are complaining that their kids don't get enough time outside. They're always stuck indoors. And also there's issues of safety as well, you know, not just road safety, but just everything in general. And this is, it's quite nice to have something like that come back, because this sort of play streets came about in 1938, because between 1924 and 1933, statistics were that up to 12,000 children are being killed in road accidents in the UK. So that's when this came about. But unfortunately, this idea of playing out on the streets had kind of stopped in the 1980s, because a lot more people were able to afford their own cars. People were parking outside their homes. So for kids to play outside on the streets had become impossible. So to have something like this come about again, where certain streets are being closed off for even just 3 hours a week, is quite nice, because kids get to know one another, they get to interact and have that bit of freedom as well, you know, not being cooped up all the time.
I mean, do you think it's really just because of this whole idea of road safety? I mean, a lot of kids now are just staying indoors because, you know, they're playing video games or what have you, and some parents, you know, they don't even want their child to go outside because they're questioning whether it's safe in other kind of regards as well, not just in terms of road safety. So do you think this is really going to work?
Well, there's lots of predators out there. and that's the main concern. I know as a parent, I'm very concerned about that. So children tend to be cooped up because when you speak to parents, they say, I'm worried that someone will lift my child. And just in my area, they were speaking of a white van driving around, targeting young girls and getting out and intimidating them into getting into the van quickly, shouting at them, get into the van quickly, get into the van. And the girl doesn't know what to do, so she just gets in the van, disappears, and
so it is definitely
really
a fear
worrying
for parents.
Yeah.
We would like to hear your views on the stories we're discussing. You can call in live to share them. The number is appearing on your screen throughout this segment, inshallah. Sister Zainab, talk us through your story, inshallah.
Yes, from The Guardian, Stop Female Scientists Being Written Out of Wikipedia History. So from the Royal Society, they're basically urging people to shine a light on women's achievements in science by going into Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is essentially written by the public. They're the ones who put the information up. And it's basically saying there's very little on female scientists, both in history and even current ones as well. And this is actually really concerning because there's no female role models, very few female role models being presented in for other girls today to kind of get into science and get into these kind of roles. So for me, it's just a sad kind of a thing that we just keep seeing, that the women aren't being valued for what they've been contributing to society. That it's sad that they don't seem to be important, that we don't seem to be important enough to have that kind of focus on. So it's this issue of value as well. But even from the Muslim community's point of view, we've only started to get to grips with our true Islamic history. You know, our true culture is that Islamic history. It's not something that's about what country I'm from, you know, the borders that I happen to come from. But it's for Muslim men and women to actually go back to that Islamic history and really learn what's going on, and that would actually give us the correct vision for what we need to be. So I just thought of giving a couple of really amazing examples. So we have Al-Shifa bint Abdullah. She was around the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and she was known as wise and illiterate woman, where not many people generally were educated in literacy. But she helped Umar radiallahu anhu with public administration, which I've mentioned before. But she was also skilled in medicine, that the Prophet ﷺ would actually ask her to go and to teach others. And even Sutaya Mahamali, she learned from many scholars, including her father, and was actually praised by Ibn Kathir, of all people, subhanAllah, amongst many other scholars. But she, in addition to all the science of literary sciences, she was also known for her work in maths, solving many mathematical problems. So subhanAllah, you see, this is our history, and this is what we need to go back to.
Absolutely. I think there has been a real push to get more girls involved in science kind of related subjects. I think, you know, we covered an article recently about the drive to kind of get girls to study the sciences more. So it's definitely interesting to hear the rich kind of history that we have in regards to this as well. So Jazakallah khair for sharing that. Sister Ayan, your next story, inshallah.
Yeah, this is from The Guardian. To bring girls into sport to get rid of old ideas of femininity. So this is kind of off the back of Helen Grant, the sports minister, what she said, that some sports are unfeminine. And maybe some people should get into cheerleading. So a lot of people just thought, oh, hang on there, what are you on about? But the thing is that looking back at, you know, just looking at the way girls grow up in society, whether it's today or even 50 years ago, at a certain age, they will stop being interested in sports because they're more interested in looking a certain way. This is a reality. You know, it's all going to be about, you know, my makeup, my hair, you know, trying to attract that sort of attention from the opposite sex. And the writer of this article was quite funny. She said that, you know, it was like she went through a change in the space of 1 minute. So 1 minute she was trying to impress her coach and her skills in the sport that she was doing. Next minute she was worried that her hair would go out of place. And then soon enough she was dropped out of her hockey team because she couldn't, you know, basically she wasn't performing as she should have done. And in a way, I agree with the fact that some sports are unfeminine, because the thing is that when you're doing sport, you're not there to focus on the way that you look. You're there to perform a certain sport. You're there to show your skills, to be athletic. And the thing is that with that, you will look a bit funny. You will start to sweat. But that's not your main concern when you're doing this. And also with the question of femininity, we don't have to change our idea of what it is to be feminine, about wearing dress, about having nice hair. Those things are fine, but it's about knowing when you know, the spectrum of where things belong. Yeah. So when you're doing sport, you're doing sport. When you're outside of that, you can look as feminine as you like, but it's knowing when to do things and when not to do things. So I don't see either one of the things as not being, you know, compatible. It's just knowing the time and place.
Well, what's your take on this story, Sister Ibtihal?
Well, I just think it's really sad that, you know, in both stories, it just shows this idea of gender equality not working in this society. They're trying to. I was reading an article about sports the other day, and they were saying that we need to dilute this gap between men and women and have them compete against each other, so that they are in the same sports. That's ridiculous. Men and women are different. It's this whole thing again, isn't it? That there is a lack of acceptance that men and women are different. We are different, but also trying to make them the same. So all sorts of problems are going to come up now. The only reason women get into sports really is to maintain that kind of body that they've been told that they have to have in order to impress the opposite sex. I think it's really sad. I think women struggle on every level of the society because they're being told you're the same, but you're different.
And it starts off at quite a young age, as we can see from the stories that we've covered today. Sister Zainab, talk us through your next story, inshallah.
From the Express, Work Not Suffragettes Won the Women's Vote. Very interesting article going through the history of the suffragettes, from just basically publicising women's rights to become increasingly aggressive in their approach. But it's basically making this point that the real change, or the majority of the change, came from people who dealt with constitutional issues, but also women being in work. So when you look at the First and Second World War, there was a huge pull for women to come into the factories to kind of keep the economy going. And this thread of, okay, let's break down the barriers of society so that women can do what? Can be useful in an economic way. I find that really concerning, that this is about human rights. You know, this is not just some additional thing. This is about what is deserved from a human being. But, you know, subhanAllah, and to basically pull it down to what's beneficial or what can create some kind of economic, you know, need is really concerning. That this point is still being pulled today. But it just gets me thinking again about how in Islam it was something that was overnight. As soon as the revelation came, the situation of women was immediately implemented. It was something that from the pre-Islamic times to after that in the Arabian Peninsula, subhanAllah, the situation of women went from being owned to being able to own, being able to vote, being able to do many things inside and outside of the house. And I mean, there's so many things that women achieved that we've spoken about.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting also that you mentioned, you know, this whole idea of this drive to get women back into work. And we're seeing that, you know, even to this day, and we've discussed this so many times on the show about how mothers are feeling almost pressured to go back into work quite soon after they have their children, because there's almost that kind of pressure perhaps from society of getting back into the swing of things and kind of getting back into work as quickly as possible. So definitely I think this is, you know, a really a big issue, and it's interesting sometimes to get the historical perspective with something like this. So Jazakallah khair for sharing that with us. Alhamdulillah, another interesting selection there. Jazakallah khair, sisters, for that. And now here's a reminder of this week's competition. This week on Women's AM, we're holding an exciting competition for all you sisters out there. Up for grabs is this 22-carat gold-plated bronze ring made with Amazonite, lapis lazuli and amethyst stones from Sultanesque. To be in with a chance to win this handcrafted jewellery, all you have to do is answer the following question. Who was the first mu'adhin or caller of adhan in Islam? Was it A. Salman al-Farsi radiallahu anhu, B. Bilal radiallahu anhu, C. Abdullah ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, or D. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu? To enter, email your answer A, B, C or D to womensam@islamchannel.tv along with your name and address and what you most like about the show. The deadline for entries is Friday the 28th of February 2014 at 4 p.m. All applicants need to be over 18 and residing in the UK, and please note only one entry per person per household. A winner will be randomly selected from the correct entries and the winner's name will be announced on Monday's show. So get entering. Well, we're off to a quick break now. Stay tuned. After the break, we'll be back with our main segment, Her Views, where we take a look at Ikhlaas or Sincerity. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.